Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and I can't sleep. Wonder why. I'm not going to talk about the election. I don't have anything to say, but it's the middle of the night and I'm awake, so I am going to drink some nasty, bitter vervain tea and talk about Wicca, because that's what I do on this channel. And today, specifically, what I want to talk about is um, why you might not want to pursue Gardnerian Wicca. I talk a lot on this channel about my experience of Gardnerian Wicca, what I get out of it. I talk a lot about the diversity in practice from one coven to another. And all of that is true and all of that is significant. And this is 100% the right place for me to be. But also, Gardnerian Wicca is not and does not claim to be a religion or a magical tradition that would appeal to everyone. There are lots of reasons why Gardnerian Wicca might not be right for you. And that's 100% okay, right? It's not trying to be for everybody. It is this very niche, very specific thing. It is a particular approach to modern pagan religious witchcraft. And I think it has value, but it doesn't have value for everyone. It does not have, and is not trying to have, a universal Catholic appeal, right? We're not trying to convert the whole world to Gardnerian Wicca. So tonight, we're going to talk through 5 things that might be indications if you are out there in the landscape of witchcraft or paganism, trying to figure out where you fit in. Here are 5 reasons why Gardnerian Wicca might not be for you. Number 1 is if you just like being solitary, right? Gardnerian Wicca is a coven-based tradition. Gardnerian rituals are designed to be performed by a group of people. Gardnerian rituals are designed to be performed by a small group of people, right? Like logistically, Wiccan ritual kind of caps out at about 12 people before it starts to get messy and you have to make adjustments to the ritual structure. But Wiccan ritual is designed to be done by more than one person. Gardnerian Wiccan ritual, that is, designed to be done by more than one person. It is not designed to be a solitary affair. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, but it's a really fundamental part of the framework of Gardnerian Wicca. And you can be doing what I've been doing for these past 7 months, because I'm living on my own in Utah and there are no other initiates here. I'm making adaptations. I'm doing things as best I can with just me. But those are adaptations. This is not the ideal. And Gardnerian Wiccan ritual is designed to be done by a coven. So if you don't want to be in a coven, if you don't like practicing witchcraft with other people, if you like just doing things by yourself for, full moons and Sabbats and whatever, then Gardnerian Wicca is not going to give you what you're looking for, because it is designed with something else entirely in mind. Reason number 2 why you might not be interested in Gardnerian Wicca is if ritual nudity is a deal breaker for you. Gardnerian covens practice nude. That's a pretty fundamental part of what we do. I don't want to do a totalizing, right? Like, there might be a coven somewhere that maybe sometimes does ritual robed or something. I haven't been to every single Gardnerian coven. I can't say for sure. But by and large, if you're looking at Gardnerian Wicca, and if you're looking for Gardnerian Wicca, nudity is going to be a part of it. That is a really essential part of Gardnerian ritual. And again, there are reasons for that within a Gardnerian framework. Ritual nudity removes indicators of things like class. Ritual nudity is an act of trust that expresses the closeness that you have with the other members of your coven, right? Personally, I feel like if I don't trust someone else enough to be naked in a room with them, then I sure as hell don't trust them enough to do magic with them. But that's a particular paradigm. And ritual nudity is not a requirement for witchcraft in general. So if you are not down with ritual nudity and never will be down with it, Gardnerian Wicca is not for you, and there are probably going to be other paths that suit you better. Now, that's not to say that it's not okay to have trepidation about ritual nudity. I think a lot of people, before they experience it, have worries or doubts or insecurities. Um, that's okay, right? That's normal. What I'm saying is if you know for sure that like ritual nudity is a line in the sand that you will never cross, it is not for you, you're not going to do it, like it's not even on the table, then Gardnerian Wicca is not for you. If you are unsure about it and you have doubts about it, and if for other reasons you're interested in exploring Gardnerian Wicca, go ahead and keep exploring. And that's a decision that you can make later on down the line once you've gotten to know people, once you've gotten to trust them. But if you know already right out the gate that is something you are never going to be willing to do, Gardnerian Wicca would just be a waste of your time. Because you would start training with the coven and then that conversation would happen and you would walk away. Reason number 3 that Gardnerian Wicca might not be for you is if you are uncomfortable with secrecy in a religious or a magical context. I have a previous video where I've talked about the point of initiatory secrecy, right? The point of it is not that, like, we know the truth and only the cool people get to know the truth and we're going to lord it above you, right? The things that are secret in Gardnerian Wicca are secret because they are private, because they are intimate and personal. They are secret because they are too sacred to talk about with people who are not a part of them. And that's very different from saying like, oh yes, I know the truth about the universe and you're not allowed to know, right? Like, I don't think that we as Gardnerians have any particular truth about the world that is inaccessible to anyone else. We have things like the identities of other initiates. We have things like, for those of us who use particular names for the gods, we have things like the names by which we call the gods. We have things like the, specifics of what happens in any particular ritual, or the specific magical techniques that we use in our tradition. And none of those are like, great grand high secrets to lord over everyone else. But they're things that are private and they're special to us, and it would be profaning them to talk about them outside of that context. It would. I can't think of a good analogy. It's the middle of the night. The point is, right, like, there are some things that are beautiful and special because they exist in a particular space, and forcibly removing them from that space destroys them. And the point of initiatory secrecy is to preserve that space around a thing that is beautiful and special. But there are people who are uncomfortable with the idea of initiatory secrecy. If you are in the craft and you are married and your spouse is not in the craft, there are things, if you're a Gardnerian initiate, there are things that you can't talk about with your spouse. There are a lot of people who are really uncomfortable with that. There are people who are uncomfortable with the idea of hierarchical secrets, right? The idea that, before initiation, there are things that you can't know, and then maybe after initiation, there are some things that you can know, but there are other things that you can't know until you've got your second degree or whatever, right? Like, and that will vary from one coven to the next. Different covens operate in different ways with regard to that. Each individual and each coven has their own boundaries around initiatory secrecy, but the secrecy is always there. And there are some people who are just really uncomfortable with that idea of something being withheld. So if you aren't on board with initiatory secrecy, again, Gardnerian Wicca, probably not the path for you. And that's okay. That's okay. There are lots of forms of witchcraft or forms of paganism that do not entail secrecy in that way. Reason number 4, we're on 4. Reason number 4 why Gardnerian Wicca might not be for you is if you are not looking for something long-term. Generally speaking, the model upon which Gardnerian Wicca is based is that you spend a chunk of time with a group, usually at least a year, before you're even initiated. And then after you're initiated, you stay in that coven unless other circumstances, unless there's some disruption from outside. You stay in that coven for years of your life. And eventually, you may choose to hive off and start your own coven, or, it does happen. Sometimes people leave the craft entirely. But the expectation, the assumption, the purpose going in is for you to find a group of people that you are going to be with and be practicing magic with for years to come. And if you're not looking for something that long-term, that's totally okay, but then Gardnerian Wicca is probably doing a different thing than the kind of thing that you want to be doing, right? So if you are really just looking to dip a toe into the magical pool and see if it's for you, or if you're the kind of person where you really feel a need to drastically change your spiritual practice every year or so, and you're constantly moving from one thing to the next, exploring something new, finding new perspectives, that's legitimate, right? That sort of attitude of the sacred wanderer is a powerful thing, but it's not a thing that really fits with Gardnerian Wicca. Because the idea with Gardnerian Wicca is that you sit with it and you take a lot of time with it. And you get to know the people in your coven and you work the mysteries deeper and deeper over years of your life. And you work the wheel of the year after year after year, and it gives you fresh perspectives on it each time. And Gardnerian Wicca is a ritual system built with the expectation that you're going to be doing it for a long time. And if you know coming in that you don't want to be doing it for a long time, if you know that you're kind of just passing through and seeing what's around, then you're not going to get much out of Gardnerian Wicca as a system. And that, and again, with all of these, none of these are criticisms. These are all legitimate things to think or feel or ways to approach your spirituality. It's just that if you want to do the sacred wanderer type thing, you're not going to get out of Gardnerian Wicca what people typically get out of it who stick around, because it's designed for you to stick around. And so you won't get the experience that you are intended to have with it. And the last reason that Gardnerian Wicca might not be for you is if you want to practice witchcraft that does not involve any kind of worship or veneration. Now, that's not to say that you have to believe in deities in order to practice Gardnerian Wicca, because there are plenty of Gardnerians who consider themselves atheists and who work Wicca in an atheistic framework. But even those who do so are still working in an explicitly religious ritual framework that involves a component of veneration. And they might have personal interpretations of what that veneration is for, right? They might have a different narrative than a theist would have. So whereas a theist might say, I'm worshiping the goddess of the moon, um, an atheist in a ritual framework like this might say something like, I see these as personifications of forces of nature, or I see these as archetypes of the unconscious, or whatever, right? Like, there are lots of different ways to approach it, but there is always going to be that element of veneration that is really built into Gardnerian Wicca. I'm generally hesitant to say anything about always when it comes to Wicca, just because there is so much variation from one coven to the next. But I do not know of any coven that doesn't have that element of, call it what you want, devotion, veneration, worship. Whatever that thing is, that feeling of being in contact with something worthy of devotion and veneration, that's always present. That is part of what Wicca does. And there are so many different ways that people approach that. It can look like so many different things, but something like that is always there. And if you just want to cast spells and you have no interest in doing worship, then you're going to find that Wicca, or at least Gardnerian Wicca, is doing things that you're not interested in doing. And you're going to end up feeling like it's a waste of your time. So those are just some midnight thoughts as I drink my disgusting, bitter, soporific tea. I love Gardnerian Wicca. It is right for me. I have never once doubted that it was right for me. But it is not for everyone. And it's okay that it's not for everyone. And a really important part of the ethos of Wicca is that we don't proselytize. We don't recruit. Right? If people want to do what we're doing, that's great and they're welcome. But there are lots of other things that people could be doing as well, and those other things are also legitimate and they're also meaningful. So these have just been a few thoughts on reasons that this might not be the thing for you. Thank you for watching. I will talk to you sometime soon.